Hey guys, in today's tutorial I'll be teaching you how to crochet a heart. This is a part of my Valentine's Day series, but of course you can make this anytime. Because it is for Valentine's Day, I decided to make it look like those conversational hearts. So that's why I do have the felt lettering, but you can also embroider if you like. And if you don't want anything on it at all, this is what it would look like. So it would just be plain, and I still like the look of this. This is also a last minute tutorial. I wasn't going to add this in, but I decided that I wanted to make a heart, and I spent like all day trying to write up this pattern. Not sure why it took so long to come up with this pattern, but I think it took me over 7 hours while I was watching SVU marathons. But you know, there's always minor differences that I do want to change, and you're probably looking at this like, girl, that's the same thing, but it is different. I do have 2 other ones before I got to this final one right here, and I do want to show that in a different video when I do my haul. So I don't want to show it in this video, but I think this one was the second or third one that I was working on, and then this is the final one. And I feel like there is a difference because the bottom of the heart, it was very hard to come up with how to make it a little bit more straight, because every time I was decreasing one side, it looked like it was a little bit more outwards than the other. So I did have to like switch up the rounds, but I feel like I really like the look of this, and I hope you guys really enjoy this tutorial. So if you're interested in making one of these, I'll let you know what you'll need in the next couple of clips. I'll be using a 4.5mm crochet hook, 4 stitch markers, and this is going to help us join our 2 pieces together. If you don't have 4 stitch markers, you can use a bobby pin, safety pin, or anything else that will help you keep track of your round. Sometimes I even use scrap pieces of yarn to keep track when I don't want to grab a stitch marker, scissors, and a hot glue gun if you're planning to use felt. Today I'll be using blue felt, but I do prefer the red. I just ran out because I was making all of the other hearts, but feel free to use any color you like. A threading needle for yarn. And lastly, you will need some stuffing. I can't believe I almost forgot to mention the yarn, but today I am using the Big Twist Value yarn. This one is in the color Varsity Gold. This is a weight of 4 yarn. Go ahead and use whatever yarn you like. That red heart that I showed you in the beginning of the video is, I think, the Red Heart Super Saver. And then that pink one is also Big Twist. I think it was in the color Bubblegum. Before we get started, I will show you my written pattern, but I do have to mention, and I always mention this, my written stuff is not very detailed because I usually only keep it for myself. So if you are going to screenshot this and you don't understand anything, just refer back to the video. But if you don't want to listen to me and you just want to screenshot this because you know how to read it, you can go ahead and do that. So it does go from this first piece, then to the second one, and then to finish like after you join it. This is the bottom part, so here's the bottom. I feel like I should just show my written stuff from now on because sometimes people end up asking me if I can write it out for them. But let me tell you, I already hate typing, so I feel like I'm just going to show it in this video so I don't have to type when someone asks. But I usually will try to type something if you guys do ask me. But yeah, this is the written stuff if you do want to go ahead and screenshot that. And I know I always tell myself I'm going to type stuff up, but it's been like 2 years and I haven't done it yet. And I really should because my writing is really ugly. But you know, it's just too much work. But if you are following this written pattern, I don't tell myself when I'm going to stuff stuff. So just make sure when you're making this, remember to stuff it before you fully close it. If you watch me, you know that I always wait until like the last minute possible to stuff it, but that's just a couple things before you decide to follow this pattern without watching this video. I also want to mention, if you're just following the written pattern, do not cut off your yarn on the second piece because the second piece is going to be used to connect to the first one. The first one, you do cut off your yarn and you place your stitch marker. And then your second piece, remember, do not cut it off because you're going to use that to connect it to your first one. For round 1, let's take our yarn and create a magic circle. So to create a magic circle, we're just going to hold on to our yarn, and I like to wrap it around 3 fingers to create this X at the front. So now that you have your X here, your loop is around your fingers. You can take your crochet hook, you go inside the loop, grab the front piece of yarn and pull it through. And then I'll twist up. And then with the hook, I'm going to go under to this yarn and pull it through the loop. And then you can, I'll let it go first. So you have your magic circle here, and then you can tighten it up. And then with this yarn here, you can pull on it to make the circle smaller. Don't pull it too small. I do like to work into tighter spaces, but you can leave it as big as you like before you decide to close it. So I'm going to keep it at this size, and now we're going to single crochet 6 times into the magic circle. So let's take our crochet hook, and you're going to go inside your circle, and you're going to grab this yarn and pull it through. We have 2 loops on the hook. You want to yarn over and pull through, and that is a single crochet. We have to do that 6 times in total, so that means I have 4 more, and I'll show you that one more time slowly. So to demonstrate this one more time slowly, I'm going to take my crochet hook and I'm going inside the circle. I'm grabbing this yarn and I'm going to pull it back through the circle, and you are working through this circle and this yarn piece right here. Now that I have 2 loops on the hook, I'm going to yarn over and pull through. Again, this is a single crochet, so I'm going to do that until I get 6 single crochets in total. I currently have 5 single crochets into my circle, but I'll show you what I usually like to do once I get to 5. So after 5, I like to take this part of the yarn and pull on it. So it closes up my circle, and I like that it closes up before I do the 6th one because I feel like it helps curve it a little bit more. So now I'm just going to go in to the circle, grab this yarn and pull it through. There's my 2 loops. I'm yarning over, pulling through for my last single crochet, and this is the end of round 1. So we can now take our stitch marker, and then you'll just place it onto the last stitch, and now we can move on to round 2. Round 2, we're going to increase into every stitch with a single crochet. So let's go into our first stitch and let's do our first increase. So let's go in with our crochet hook, pushing my hook through, grabbing this yarn. There's our 2 loops. Let's yarn over and pull through. So that was 1 single crochet, but to make it an increase, we have to do 1 more into the same stitch. So go into that same stitch, push your hook through, grab this yarn. We have 2 loops on the hook. Now let's yarn over and pull through both loops, and that was an increase into the first stitch. So now we have to repeat that all the way through until we get 12 stitches in total. So I'm going to demonstrate that one more time slowly. So going into my next stitch, let's go in to that stitch, grab this yarn and pull it through. We have 2 loops on the hook. Let's yarn over and pull through both loops. Do I have something on my hand? Okay, so now let's do that one more time into the same stitch. So let's go in, grab this yarn and pull it through. 2 loops on the hook, yarning over and pulling through both. So I did an increase into the next stitch, and remember it's 2 single crochets into 1 stitch. That's why it's an increase. Now I'm just going to repeat that all the way through until I get 12 stitches total. Once you get to your stitch marker, you can just remove it and then do your last increase. That was 1 and 2. Then put your stitch marker back in, and now we have 12 stitches in round 2. For round 3, we're going to do another increasing round. So let's start off with an increase into the first stitch. So there's my first stitch. Let's go in, grab this yarn and pull it through. 2 loops, yarning over, pulling through both. Remember, an increase, we have to do another single crochet into the same stitch. So there's my second single crochet into the same stitch. Now we have to single crochet into the next stitch. So this next stitch right here, I'm just going to go in and I'm doing 1 single crochet. So you have to repeat those 2 steps all the way through until you get 18 stitches in total. We'll demonstrate that one more time. So going into the next stitch, I'm going in with an increase. So that was 1 single crochet and another one into the same stitch. Then I'm following that by 1 single crochet into the next stitch. And now I'm just going to repeat that all the way through until I get 18 stitches in total. And then the one at your stitch marker is just going to be 1 single crochet into that one. That's how you should end off. And then I'll be back after I finish crocheting this part off camera. I'm back at my stitch marker. I'm just going to remove that and do my last single crochet. And now we are done with round 3. Round 4, we're going to start off with an increase into the first stitch. So here's my first stitch. Let's go in with, that was 1 single crochet, doing another one into the same stitch. And now we're going to single crochet into the next 1, 2 stitches. So just 1 single crochet into each of those. So now going into my next one for another single crochet. And now we have to repeat those 3 steps all the way through until we get 24 stitches in total, and I will demonstrate one more time. So going into my next stitch, I'm going in with an increase. That was 1 and 2 into the same one. Now we're going to single crochet into the next 1, 2 stitches. So just 1 single crochet into each of those. Going into the next one. And now I'm just going to repeat this all the way through until I get 24 stitches in total for round 4. If you do have a little opening right here, you can just pull on this yarn and it should close it up. So you can see it's closed now. So let's move on to round 5 now, which is another increasing round. So let's increase into the first stitch. So here's my first stitch. Let's do our 2 single crochets into that stitch. That was 1 and 2. Now we're going to single crochet into the next 1, 2, 3 stitches. So let's just do 1 single crochet into each of those stitches. Now I'm going into my last one for my last single crochet. So now you have to repeat those 4 steps all the way through until you get 30 stitches in total. So going into my next stitch, I'm starting off with my increase. So that was 1 single crochet and my second one into the same stitch because that is an increase. Now we're going to single crochet into the next 1, 2, 3 stitches. So just 1 single crochet into each of those. So now I'm just going to repeat these steps all the way through until I get my 30 stitches in total for round 5. For round 5, this is what it should look like. So moving on to round 6, all we're doing is a single crochet round, which means there's going to be no stitch count change. It's just 30 stitches still in round 6. And this round is really easy, so I'm going to finish this part off camera, and then I'll be back to show you our last increasing round, which is round 7. Once you finish round 6, it does start to curve downward just a little bit, but now let's move on to round 7, which is our last increasing round. So to start off our increasing round, let's go into the first stitch with our first increase. So that was 1 single crochet and another one into the same stitch. Next, we're going to single crochet into the next 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches. Okay, so now I'm single crocheting into the next 4 stitches. That's my first, second, third, and fourth. Now I'm going to repeat those 5 steps all the way through until I get 36 stitches in total. So let's go into our next stitch with an increase. That was 1 and 2 single crochets into the same stitch. Now we're single crocheting into the next 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches. This is my third and fourth. So now I'm just going to repeat those 5 steps all the way through until I get 36 stitches in total in round 7. Now we're going to move on to round 8. So round 8 is going to be really easy. All you're doing is single crocheting into each one of these stitches, which means there is no count change. You're still going to have a round of 36 stitches in this round because all we're doing is single crocheting. And this is going to be the last round for our first piece. So I'm just going to finish single crocheting this round and I'll be right back. Once you finish round 8, this is what the first piece looks like. So you're going to need 2 of these, but before we get to that, I want to show you what you just made. So this is the heart right here. What you're making right now is these little bumps at the top. So we just did 1. You're going to have to make 1 more, and I'm not going to demonstrate that again because of storage space reasons. You will have to go back if you forgot how to make this, but I'm going to show you how to end off the first piece. So the first piece, we're going to cut it off. So you're just going to take some scissors and cut this off. I actually have one pre-made already. This is my first piece that I did prep for this video, and you do need to cut off some excess yarn because we are going to sew the middle. So after you cut off your yarn, what you can do here is just, you have this loop here. Once you cut off your yarn, you just want to take your yarn piece that you cut off and put it through the loop. And then you're just going to tighten it that way. And as you can see, I did leave my stitch marker in because we will need that when we join our pieces together, just to keep track. So there's my first stitch marker. Let's take your second one. Remember, I did say we need 4 in the beginning of this video. Right now, you just need 2 because we're working on the first piece. So you want to place this next one 4 stitches away from this stitch marker. We want to have 4 spaces in between. We'll basically put it in the 5th one. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'm placing it into my 5th one here. you want to make sure you have 4 stitches in between both of these. So now you're done with your first piece. Now we have our first piece completed. You have to make a second one, but on your second one, do not cut off your yarn. I repeat, do not cut off the yarn because you will be connecting the 2 pieces together. So for your second piece, just repeat rounds 1 to round 8, and then I'll show you how to join them together. So here's my second piece, and now I'm going to do the same thing with my second stitch marker. I'm just going to place it on my 5th stitch. So here is my 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. That's 5 away from this guy right here. So you should have 4 stitches in the middle. And now we're going to join these 2 pieces together. Okay, so now that you have your second piece, you want to take your hook and just place it back into where you did your last single crochet. And now let's grab our second or your first piece, and we're going to connect this together. So we have our stitch markers where we can match it next to each other. So this pink one is going to go next to this blue one because this is the top of the heart. It wouldn't make sense if I went this way. You want it to be right next to each other. So we're going to connect this with a single crochet. So if you want, you can remove your stitch marker and then single crochet, but I'm just going to leave it there for now because I can still insert my hook through. So all I'm going to do is take my crochet hook, insert it into the stitch where that stitch marker is. Remember, if it's hard, just remove your stitch marker. So now I'm just going to take my yarn and pull it through. This is just a single crochet, so what we've been doing, we have our 2 loops on the hook. Let's yarn over and pull through both loops. Just to make it clear, what we just did was single crochet these 2 sides together where this stitch marker is the original one, and then we connected it to this blue one right here, the first piece. Now we're going to single crochet 31. So your 31st stitch is going to be where this stitch marker is. So all you have to do is just single crochet this round, and that should be 31 stitches. So I'm just going to start single crocheting until I get to that stitch marker. And once I get to that stitch marker, I will come back to show you how to end it off. Also, I know this yarn piece right here is kind of in the way, but we're using that later to sew the middle piece together. So that'll be out of our way pretty soon. But now to connect this side to this next one, you're going to do the same thing with what you did right here. So it's just a single crochet. So this time I'm just going to remove the stitch marker so no one gets confused. But you can remove your stitch marker and just don't lose your place. So I'm going to single crochet into this one right here. So I'm single crocheting this side together with 1 single crochet. So I'm just going to insert my hook into the stitch, grab this yarn through. I have 2 loops on the hook. I'm yarning over and pulling through both. So now we're done with 2 stitch markers. We can actually move this middle one right here. So the one that's right in the middle, you don't want to take this one out because this is your original one. So let's just remove the middle stitch marker. You don't need that anymore. And then now that we connected this side together, we're just going to single our last 31 stitches. Your 31 is going to be at this last stitch marker. So I'm just going to go in and start my single crochets. So remember, you're not counting the one you connected. You're starting with the next stitch over, this one right here, and you're doing 31 stitches in total on this side. So I'm just going to single crochet until I get back to my stitch marker. So I made it back to the original stitch marker. So now I'm just going to remove the stitch marker, put my hook back into the loop, and do my last single crochet, which should be 31 on this side now. Once you connect your 2 pieces together, this is what it should look like. And before we sew this middle piece right here, I do want to explain our stitch count. So you should have a total of 64 stitches in this round. I also want to explain how we got 64. So remember, I told you we have to single crochet 31 on this side, and we also single crochet 31 on this side. So 31 plus 31 is 62. So we get to 64 because we connected these 2 parts right here with a single crochet, which makes it 63. And then your 64 is because we also connected these 2 pieces together with another single crochet. So that's how you got 64. 31 plus these 2 right here. Now let's sew up this middle part. So what you want to do is take your threading needle, and then I'm going to flip this over. And remember how I said we have to leave that excess yarn, so you can take this one right here. And then let's take our threading needle and insert the yarn. Okay, so if you already know how to sew, you can sew it however you like, but I'll explain how I do it. So you can see that this yarn piece is on this side right here, and I'm going to be working on this side. So I'm going to take my threading needle and push it in through this stitch. So it's literally right across from where the yarn is connected. And then I'm going to go back onto the other side, just matching up the stitches. I'll push through and just pull it like that. So again, I'm going back to this side. So you can see the yarn is on this one, but I'm over here. And then I'm going to push through this stitch out through the next. So this is what it looks like. I'm going to push the needle through, and then I'll just keep repeating that until I get to the end. I'll actually do this one and then show you what it looks like on the other side. So this is how it looks on the other side. I'll just flip it back and I'll finish sewing this up. I'll show that one more time. So going into the next stitch after, I'm just going to poke through both sides, push through. All right, so now let me finish the rest off camera and I'll be right back. Okay, so I just finished the last couple of stitches. Now I'm just going to go back in and I'll just weave it through. I'm literally just putting it through any stitch, and I'm just going to make sure it's secure. I feel like it's already secure, but this is just another step we can do to make sure nothing gets loose. And I'll actually show you another way. So what we can do is take our threading needle and push it through a stitch. Okay, this time I'm not going to pull all the way through. I'm just going to take some of the yarn through. You see my thumb holding onto this loop right here. I'm not going to let it go through. I'm now going to take my threading needle and push it through this loop. And that's just one way we can secure it. And now you have the middle sewed up, and that's what it looks like. Okay, so if these middle pieces bother you, you can cut it off if you don't want it to get in your way, or you can kind of tie it together to make sure it doesn't like move around too much. Usually it doesn't bother me, but I'm going to tie it just so it's a little bit easier to show in this video, like when I do my other stitches, so this isn't in the way. But I'm just going to tie these together just to make sure it's not in my way when I'm crocheting. I'm literally just tying knots. I know it's messy, but this is just going to stay on the inside anyways, and that's just excess stuffing. Now that we have both of our pieces connected together and we have sewed the middle, we are now going to start off with new rows. I'm just doing this because I feel like it's easier to keep track. So this next row we're doing is going to be round 1. Actually, we're going to be doing round 1 and 2 right now, and that's because they're just going to be single crochet rounds. So you're just going to have 64 stitches in each of those rounds because we're not changing anything. We're just doing a single crochet row so we can create some length. So remember to go into the right stitch. I'm going into this one right here because that was the middle one we connected. So I'm going into this right here, and I'm just doing a single crochet. Remember, these are 2 rounds of single crochets. That means you should end up with 64 stitches in both of those because we are not changing anything. We just want a little bit of length. So I'm going to finish this part off camera because it's going to take a while, and these are only single crochets, so it shouldn't be too difficult. Remember, just make sure you have 64 stitches in each of these rounds. I'm back after crocheting round 1. I just wanted to show you what it looks like. So you can see this is how the top of our heart is looking. And I'm just going to do round 2 now. Remember, round 2 is also just a single crochet round. After this round, I will show you how to do your decreases. So basically after this, we're going to start decreasing for most of it, and it's pretty easy. I will be showing the invisible decrease in this video because I feel like it does look better when I'm making the heart, because I feel like if you do the normal one, you can definitely tell the difference. So I will show the invisible decrease in this video, but I'll just finish this round and then I'll be right back. Okay, so now that we finished 2 rounds of single crochets, let's move on to round 3. Round 3, we're going to start off with our invisible decrease into the first 2 stitches. So here are the first 2 stitches right here. So to do an invisible decrease, you're going into the front loop only. So let's take our crochet hook and we're going into the front loop of this stitch, which means let's just go in and poke through the middle of the first one. My hand looks so dry, I had to put lotion on there. But now to do the invisible decrease, let's just do the same thing to the next stitch over. So let's just take our hook, bend it down, and you're going into the front loop only of the next stitch. So now we have 3 loops on the hook. Let's yarn over, and we're going to pull through the first 2 loops. So that's 1, 2 right there. Now we have 2 loops left on the hook. Let's yarn over and pull through both, and that was an invisible decrease. Now you're going to single crochet into the next 30 stitches. So just make sure you don't lose count, but I'm now going to single crochet 30 stitches. Okay, so after you do 30 single crochets, now we're going to do another invisible decrease. So these 2 stitches right here, we're going to go into the front loop only. So take your crochet hook, you want to go into the front loop only, so we're just going to push through the middle. And then we're going to take our hook and bend it down to do the same thing to the next stitch. So I'm bending it down, and I'm going to push through the middle to go into the front loop only. I have 3 loops on my hook. I'm going to yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops. I have 2 loops left. I'm going to yarn over and pull through the last 2. And that was our invisible decrease. Now we're going to single crochet our last 30 stitches, and the last one will be, of course, at our stitch marker. Okay, so while I'm single crocheting these last 30, let me just tell you what happened. So I just went to go walk my dog because it's supposed to rain soon, and it's about like 8:30 a.m. right now. And there's like a lot of dog poop in our neighborhood. It's because I guess, you know, since quarantine happened, a lot of people have been getting dogs and they just don't know how to clean up after their pets. And it's really annoying because I feel like for some reason, most times our neighbors will catch me or my mom outside with my dog and they think it's us. But, you know, we carry like so many bags on our leash and they'll still say something. And, you know, I totally understand because, you know, you're just seeing this poop on the ground and you're never probably seeing the person who actually does it, which isn't us. But yeah, it's really annoying. Usually I'll take my dog to the park and stuff because I just don't want to deal with my neighbors. But you know, today it's like gonna rain soon. It was kind of sprinkling, so I didn't want to drive because my dog doesn't like the windshield on. So yeah, it's just really annoying. Like, how do you get people to pick up after their pets? And also, why aren't they doing it? I don't understand that. Like, it's so disrespectful to just leave it on someone's lawn, especially when your dog is so huge and their poop looks like human poop. And obviously my dog couldn't do it because she's literally the size of that poop they're leaving behind. But yeah, and it's really annoying when their house is like literally on the inside of the alley, so they're not obviously going to get anything happening to their lawn because they don't have any grass. But yeah, it's really annoying. Like, just pick up after your pets. I was complaining so much that I messed up these rounds, so I have to refilm this now, but for round 3 you should have ended up with 62 stitches in total. So now let's move on to round 4. Okay, so first we're going to start off by single crocheting into the next 29 stitches. So since this part is going to take a while, I will finish this off camera and then I'll be back. But remember, we're just single crocheting into the next 29 stitches. After single crocheting into the next 29 stitches, we're now going to do a decrease. So in these 2 stitches right here, let's just go in through the front loop only. So just take your hook, push through the middle, go down, push through the middle of the next stitch, and then you have your 3 loops, yarn over, pull through the first 2, yarn over and pull through the last 2, and now we're going to single crochet into the next 29 stitches. So you're just repeating what we just did. So let's go into our next 29. After you single crochet 29, we've made it to the end and we have to do our last decrease. So what we're going to do is take our stitch marker and remove it because we need to go into these next 2 stitches. So we're going into the front loop only, bend down, do that to the next one. We have our 3 loops, yarn over, pull through the first 2, yarn over, pull through the last 2. And this is the end of round 4. You now have 60 stitches in total in round 4. For round 5, we're going to start off with a decrease. So into these first 2 stitches here, remember we're doing our invisible decrease, which means we're going into the front loop only, bend down the hook, and then go into the front loop of the next stitch, yarn over, pull through the first 2, yarn over, pull through the last 2. Now you're going to follow that by single crocheting into the next 10 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now I'm just going to speed this up so I don't waste my storage space. I said I was going to speed it up, but I actually just went off camera. But now let's go ahead and repeat those steps again. So repeating 11 steps, which is the decrease, and then single crocheting into the next 10. And you're just repeating this until you get 55 stitches in total for round 5. So going into our next 2 stitches, we're doing our decrease. We're just going into the front loop only of the first and now the second, We have 3 loops on the hook, yarning over, pulling through the first 2, yarning over, pulling through the last 2. Now I'm going to single crochet into the next 10 stitches, and I will speed this part up. Okay, so now I'm just going to repeat that all the way through, and I just want to explain something. So if we start off with a decrease in the beginning of the round, you're going to end up single crocheting into the last stitch at the end. If you start off with single crocheting into the first couple of stitches, you're going to end off with a decrease. So every time we end off with a decrease into the last stitch, I'll just show that. But if I don't show the ending part, it just means you're just going to single crochet the rest of that. Once you finish round 5, you should have your 55 stitches in total. So now moving on to round 6, we're going to start off by single crocheting into the next 9 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So next we're going to decrease into the next stitch. So here's our next 2 stitches. We're just going to do our invisible decrease by going into the front loop only of the first stitch, and then you'll bend your hook down just a tiny bit to go into the next loop or next stitch. Now you have your 3 loops, yarn over, pull through the first 2, yarn over, pull through the last 2. So now you just have to repeat those 10 steps all the way through until you get 50 stitches in total. So I'll show that one more time by single crocheting into the next 9 stitches. This is 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So now I'm just going to decrease again. So here's my next 2 stitches. I'm going into the front loop only, then into the next stitch over. Oops. Last 2 loops, yarning over and pulling through the last 2. So now I'm just going to repeat this all the way through until I get my 50 stitches total. Okay, so now I'm towards the end. I'm just going to remove my stitch marker because I have to do my last decrease. So I just remove my stitch marker, and I'm just going to go into the front loop only of my last 2 stitches because we are ending off with a decrease. And after I do this, I will have my 50 stitches in round 9, and then I'll just place my stitch marker back on, and now we can move on to this was round 6, and now we can move on to round 7. Once you're done with round 6, this is what it currently looks like. So let's move on to another decreasing round, but this time we're going to start off with a decrease. So going into the first 2 stitches right here, we're going into the front loop only, 3 loops on the hook, yarning over, pulling through the first 2, yarn over, pull through the last 2. And then now we're going to single crochet into the next 8 stitches. This is 5, 6, 7, and 8. Now we're going to repeat those 9 steps all the way through until we end up with 45 stitches in round 7. So I'll show that again. We're going in with a decrease. So these 2 stitches right here, remember, into the front loop only of the first, then the second. We have our 3 loops, yarning over, pulling through the first 2, yarn over, pull through the last 2, and then we're going to follow that by single crocheting into the next 8. This is 5, 6, 7, 8, and now I'm just going to repeat these steps all the way through until I get my 45 stitches in round 7. Once you finish round 7, this is what it looks like. You can see that it starts to curve in a bit more, but because we don't want to curve it in too much just yet, for round 8 and 9, you're just going to single crochet those rounds. I will not be showing that part on camera because they are just all single crochets, which means you're not going to be having any new stitch counts. You should still end up with a total count of 45 in each of those rounds. Okay, so after rounds 8 and 9, we have a little bit more length. So let's go back to decreasing. So for round 10, this time we're going to start off by single crocheting into the next 7 stitches. So let's just go in and single crochet the next 7 stitches. So that was 1, 2, 3, and then this is 7. So now we're going to decrease into the next 2 stitches. So these 2 here, let's do our normal invisible decrease, going into the front loop of both of those stitches, yarning over, pulling through the first 2 loops, yarning over, pulling through the last 2. Now we're going to repeat those steps all the way through until we get our 40 stitches. So I'll show that again by single crocheting into the next 7 stitches first. That was 1, 2, this is 6, and 7. Now we're going to decrease into the next 2 stitches. So these 2 here, let's do our invisible decrease by going into the front loop only of the first, and then the second. Then you'll yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops, yarn over, pull through the last 2 loops on the hook. And now we're just going to repeat that all the way through until we get our 40 stitches in total in round 10. Once you get towards the end, you have your 2 left, so you just need to remove your stitch marker and do your last decrease. So let's go into the front loop only of these 2 stitches, yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops, yarn over, pull through the last. Then you'll put your stitch marker back, and now you have 40 stitches in total in round 10. Continuing on with our decreases. For round 11, this time we're going to start off with a decrease into the first 2 stitches. Let's do our front loop only invisible decrease. Yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops, yarn over, pull through the last 2. This time we're going to single crochet into the next 6 stitches. So that's 1, 2, and this is 6. Then you're going to repeat those steps all the way through until you get 35 stitches in total in round 11. So let's go in with our decrease into the next stitches, or 2 right here. We're going into the front loop only, 3 loops on the hook, we're yarning over, pulling through the first 2, yarn over, pull through the last 2. And let's follow that by single crocheting into the next 6 stitches. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So let's just repeat this all the way through until we get 35 stitches in total in round 11. Once you finish round 11, you have your 35 stitches, and this is what it looks like. So now moving on to round 12 and 13, they're going to be single crochet rounds, which means I won't be showing this on camera because they're just simple rounds, all single crochets, which means you are not going to have any stitch count changes. You will still have 35 stitches in each of those rounds. Remember, just single crochet rounds 12 and 13. After rounds 12 and 13, you can see that it's coming along really nicely. It kind of looks like a butt on this side, but you can just push it out a bit. You don't need to worry too much because we're going to stuff it later. But let's move on to round 14, 14 now. Let's single crochet into the first 5 stitches. So that's my 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then now we're going to follow that off by decreasing into these 2 stitches right here. Let's just do our normal invisible decrease. So we just went into our front loop only, we're yarning over, pulling through the first 2 loops, yarn over, and pull through the last 2. So now you just have to repeat those 6 steps all the way through until you get 30 stitches in total. So I'm going to do that again by single crocheting into the next 5 stitches first. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then now let's decrease. So we're going into these 2 stitches here. Remember, just the front loop only. Yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops, yarn over, pull through the last 2. So now I'm just going to repeat that until I get my 30 stitches. Now that I'm towards the end, remember I said I'll show it when it's always decreasing at the end. So we have our 2 left. Let's remove our stitch marker and do our last decrease. So we're going into the front loop only of our last 2 stitches, and then we're going to yarn over, pull through the first 2, yarn over, pull through the last two. I'll put my stitch marker back on, and now that you have your 30 stitches in round 14, we're going on to round 15, where we're just going to do a single crochet round. So I'm going to finish this one off camera, but because this is just a single crochet row, I don't need to show it too much because it's just a single crochet round, which means there's no stitch count changes. You're still going to have a total of 30 stitches in round 15. Once you finish round 15, you can see that we're almost done. We do have a couple more rows, but before we get to that, let's just stuff our little heart right now. I'm going to stuff it with stuffing and some excess yarn I have from other projects that I failed at. So let me go ahead and stuff this really quick, and then I'll be back. So I just finished stuffing my heart, and the way you stuff it will definitely change the shape of this, so just take your time with this so you can kind of adjust it to how you like it. Remember to add a little bit more stuffing between these areas right here so you can fill up that gap. If you don't, it will kind of look like a butt, so make sure you just fill it up. But now we can move on to our decreasing round. So we're going on to round 16 now. For round 16, let's first start off with a decrease into the first stitch, well, these two right here. So we're going in with our invisible decrease, and we're just going into the front loop only, if I can get my hook through. And then we're going to yarn over, pull through the first two loops, yarn over, pull through the last two. And then you're going to follow that by single crocheting into the next 4 stitches. So here's 1, 2, 3, and 4. So now we have to repeat those 5 steps all the way through until we get 25 stitches in total in round 16. So let's follow this by going in for our decrease into the front loop only, and then now we're going to single crochet into the next 4 stitches. So that was 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I'm just going to repeat that all the way through until I get my 25 stitches in total for round 16. Okay, so we don't want it to decrease too much yet, so for round 17, let's just single crochet this entire round, which means you're just going to end up with 25 stitches still because you're not going to be changing anything. It's just a full single crochet row. So I'm just going to finish this, or maybe I'll speed this part up, and then I'll be back after I finish round 17. Remember, just single crochet this entire round. You're ending up with 25 stitches in total. Okay, so we have 4 more rounds left, and they're going to be all decreasing rounds. So now that we finished round 17, we're on to round 18, and in this round we're going to start off by single crocheting into the next 3 stitches. So this is 1, 2, and 3. Then we're going to decrease, so going into these 2 stitches here, we're just going into the front loop only to do our decrease. So now we have to repeat those 4 steps all the way through until we get 20 stitches in total in this round. All right, I'm losing my voice. So now let's just do this one more time. Well, I'm going to show it one more time. Let's go in by single crocheting into the next 3 stitches. So 1, 2, and 3. And then we're following that by a decrease. So these 2 stitches right here, we're doing our invisible decrease. We're going through the first 2 loops, yarning over, pulling through the last 2. And then now we're just going to repeat that all the way through until we get our 20 stitches in round 18. I'm at the end of round 18, so I'm just going to remove my stitch marker because I need to do my last decrease. So let's just go in to the, remember, just the front loop only. Then we'll yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops, yarn over, pull through the last 2. Then we're just going to insert our, where's my stitch marker? And then now we're going to move on to round 19. Remember, in round 18, we do have 20 in this round. For round 19, we're going to start off with a decrease. So these 2 stitches right here, we're just going to go into the front loop only. yarn over, pull through the first 2, yarn over, pull through the last 2, and then we're going to follow that by single crocheting into the next 1, 2 stitches. So I just did 2 there. So now we're just going to repeat those 3 steps all the way through until we get 15 stitches in total. So I'll show that one more time. Let's start off with a decrease, yarning over, pulling through my last 2, and now we're going to single crochet into the next 1, 2 stitches. And then I'll just repeat that all the way through until I get 15 stitches in total in round 19. Now that the closure is getting a little bit smaller, I'm just going to stuff it a little bit more so it'll be a little bit easier before we move on. So I'm just going to stuff this really quick and then I'll be right back. Now moving on to round 20, let's start off by single crocheting into the first stitch. And then we're going to follow that by a decrease into the next 2 stitches, so these 2 right here. Remember, it's still our invisible decrease. And then you're just going to repeat those 2 steps all the way through until you get 10 stitches in total. So going into the next stitch, I'm just doing 1 single crochet. And now I'm doing a decrease, so it's just alternating between a single crochet and a decrease, and then I'll just repeat that until I get my 10 stitches total. Oh, we're so close to being done. I'm so happy because my back hurts. Okay, so I'm towards the end. I'm just going to remove my stitch marker and I'll do my last decrease. So going into these 2 here. And I'm just going to leave my stitch marker out because we only have 1 round left. And for round 21, all we're doing is decreasing 3 times. If you want to stuff it a little bit more, you can go ahead and do that. But I feel like mine is good enough. So I'm just going to go in and I'm going to decrease 3 times. It's going to be a little bit hard because this is a smaller round. So that was 1. Here's 2. Let's see if I can do the 3rd one. And here is the 3rd one. Oh my god. Hold on, let me do that again. Again, it's a little bit harder because this space is so small. But let's just do 3 in total. Yeah. Come on. All right, there we go. You know what? I'm just gonna pull it through. Okay, so there's my last one. Now I'm going to cut this off so I can end up the closure. So just cut it off to leave a little bit so we can sew this around. So I'm just going to cut it about like right here. And I'm just going to pull this straight out. You know what? I think I'm going to stuff it just a tiny bit more. So I just put a tiny bit more stuffing. Now let's end this closure off. If you watch my videos, you know how we end it. Let's take our crochet hook, insert it to the next stitch. And we're going to take this yarn and just pull it through. And then you're just going to repeat that all the way around. So taking my hook, going into the next stitch, taking this yarn, pulling it through. And I'll just continue doing that until I get all the way back around. Can you guys hear the rain? It started raining now. And now my doggy is sleeping. Okay, so now that I'm all the way back around, we can just pull on this yarn. Just to make it a little bit more secure, we're just going to take our hook and push it through a stitch. Grab this yarn through. And don't pull all the way, just enough until you have this loop here. Take your yarn and put it through that loop. Just tighten that up, and then we can stuff the yarn back in with our scissors. So I'll just finish this part off camera and then I'll be right back. After you push the yarn back in, it's going to look a little bit weird, but all we have to do now is just shape it to our liking. I kind of like to make mine a little bit flat. And then push this down in the middle. And there is the heart. After you finish shaping it, this is what it should look like. And now we're going to move on to the felt, or if you're embroidering, you can go ahead and do that. But if you want to stop here, that's totally fine. But I'm now going to move on to the felt. And for the felt, I will be using this blue one here. Okay, so for the felt part, you can choose to write whatever you want. You saw in the beginning of the video, I had love and EXO. I did write hugs on my other one, but you can write anything you like. So I'm going to do love on this one because it's a little bit easier. And I think I'm just going to freehand it, so I can't really show you guys or tell you guys how to do it. If you want, you can trace on whatever writing you want onto this and then cut that out. But I'm just going to freehand it because I always like to do whatever is easier. So I'm just cutting off a strip. Then now I'm just going to freehand my work. I think I'm just going to do a time lapse of this because it's going to take me a while, because I'm just going to cut off whatever I feel like and adjust it to the heart. Okay, so this is what it looks like after I cut out the letters. Now, it probably would look better if I, trace it out before I cut it, but I didn't want to do that. I feel like this is good enough. So now after you cut out your letters, let's just glue everything on. So I'm just going to heat up my gun really quick, and probably the lighting will be changed in the next clip because I do need to plug in my glue gun now. After gluing everything on, this is how mine's turned out. I'm so excited. I love this one so much. I think this one is my favorite out of all of the tutorials I made for Valentine's Day because it's just so cute. I'm definitely going to make one for myself. Also, I can't wait to show you the other ones that I made for the hospice. I'm going to do a haul video of everything I crocheted for them for Valentine's Day, so hopefully I'll see you in that video. But I love this one so much, and oh my gosh, so this is so funny, but do you guys ever like look at a word and you're like, is that how you spell it? Because I've been staring at this love like forever, and I'm like, is that how I spell it? I think it's because of this L right here. It kind of looks like an I. I probably should have made the capital L instead of this one. But for now, I think that's just good enough. But I hope you guys really enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in my next one.